Hi, I'm Issie Barratt of the National Youth Jazz Collective. I'm the Artistic Director. Want to welcome you today to this evening's hashtag National Youth Jazz Wednesday. And we're really thrilled to be joined by two of our teaching artists who I'm going to introduce to you in a moment. But first of all, I'd like to welcome Nick to the stage. Nick Brown, our Programme Manager. Hi, Nick. How are you doing?
Hello, good evening. Very, very good. It's been a fantastic 3 days with NYJC, as it always is.
So what have you been focusing on these last 3 days?
The last 3 days has been the audition tour that's happening in April. So we're planning a 13-day audition tour all around the country, far and wide, to recruit NYJC 2021.
Ready for Repton, last week of August.
Absolutely.
It's looking nearer and nearer, more and more likely that we're going to be able to do a live summer school as well, which is really exciting. And then we had a lovely catch up with one of our regional partners, didn't we? Hearing about how the music services are currently engaging with the youngsters and sort of making plans for between now and the summer school, then the summer school and afterwards. And so we'll be talking to them about our blended learning. So we'll be doing a programme that's half online and half face-to-face, which we're very excited about. And then all this marketing stuff that you've been talking about, which is very exciting as well. So what's that all about?
Yeah, we've had some really lovely conversations about how we kind of bring NYJC more into the digital age than it is already, and how we can just kind of maximize what we're doing and really shout about all the amazing things that NYJC have and do and keep doing, so our message really gets to those people who we want to reach.
So anyone that's watching, if you've got any ideas of how you think we should make that network reach more widely, do let us know. And also to remind you that you're very welcome to post questions in the comments of the Facebook page now, and Nick will forward that through us to us. So we're going to be joined in a minute by 6 of our young musicians who are going to ask our guests various questions, but please do feel part of the conversation. You're really welcome to join us. So I think without further ado, I'd like to welcome our 2 guests, if that's all right with you, Nick.
Absolutely.
See you in a minute. Martin Speake, come and join me and say hello on the centre stage. Hello, Martin.
Hello there. Hi, Izzy.
Lovely to see you. And I obviously wish that we were meeting in person, but really lovely that we get the chance to have this conversation. How's it all been since we last spoke? Have you, because it was the beginning of term, I think it was nearer the beginning of the term when we first spoke.
Oh, was it then? Yeah, okay. I mean, actually, it's probably been a bit better than expected in a lockdown situation. I'm still teaching at colleges, still going in for a lot of one-to-ones and also some playing sessions, so that's great.
Fantastic. And how have you been faring with sort of practicing at home and working on things for yourself? Has that been a nice period of time to?
Yeah, I seem to be doing a lot of transcribing of tunes and listening to a lot of things and transcribing some solos. Yeah,
like
there is that aspect of it that maybe I've got a bit more time to do that.
And who particularly have you been focusing on?
Well, I've got so many things. For instance, I've just come back from the Guildhall, and I like doing whole album projects with students. So I discovered this Dexter Gordon album I'd never heard of called Lullaby for a Monster with just bass and drums. The only time he ever recorded. Wow. You know, he normally is quite a straight ahead player with piano, bass, drums, and this is just with bass and drums with Niels Henning, Orsted Pedersen, and Alex, real Scandinavian amazing musicians. So I just set them that, you know, so that was nice, which meant I had to work out all the tunes. I'd never come across the album before. I kind of forced myself to do things. I come across a new album that I don't know and kind of work on it with the students. So that's what I was doing today.
Well, the other person that's joining us today, we're thrilled to also to welcome to centre stage, and all those of you that were involved in the summer school this year and watched the performances. Alyson, Cawley, come and say hello. It's lovely to see you again. How are you doing?
Fine. Thanks for inviting me, Izzy.
So we saw you recently when we did the performance, and we shared some of the work that you'd done with your group from the summer school when we did the festival over the last 2 weeks. But it's really lovely now that we've got the opportunity to focus on talking to you about you as a musician, you as what you were doing when you were a student and their age, and what you're up to now, and top tips for, you know, anybody that would like to know a bit more about how to be focused as a musician and in their learning and their journey. But I was just wondering what you've been up to, because we haven't even had a chance to ask you, what have you been up to since the school? You know, what sort of things have you been doing?
Oh gosh, well, my kids have had their mocks, their GCSE mocks and their A-level mocks, so I've been helping them with their studies and and playing a bit. Martin and I have been playing a bit as well and composing a bit together.
Oh, great.
Not actually together. We both write stuff and then bring it together and play. What else? I've been teaching in a school as well. One of the schools I teach at, they've been in person, so I've been able to go in and do some things. We're doing something online tomorrow, virtually, which that's been a bit of a godsend, because I've really missed teaching in person.
Yeah, and I think everybody that's been providing stuff online has been doing a great job, but I do think there is that sort of fatigue now, isn't there? And people are chomping at the bit to meet in person and make sound. And obviously with the vaccine and hearing about that, everybody's getting very excited about that and hoping that we can meet together in person more regularly after Easter. I think everyone's hoping. So let's see what happens. So first of all, I'd like to welcome to the stage somebody that you know really well, Rabih, because she was actually in your group from the summer school. So Rabih Kelly, come and join us, and you're going to kick off with the very first question. How are you doing, Rabih? All good?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
You're still fired up and motivated after the week that we spent together in August? Yeah. In what way has it fired you up and motivated you?
Well, it was really nice, like talking with people again, because I hadn't talked with like a group of young musicians in a while, so that was really nice. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's that sort of collegiate and working together with other young musicians of your own level of ability, because that's the other thing. On a national level, we realise that often people feel like they're big fishes in a pond and they don't really know anyone their own age that's interested in music. So it's a lovely way of bringing people together. So without further ado, Rabih, what's your question? And we'll ask Martin the question first.
Okay. Well, I was wondering, did you did you train classically as well, like alongside jazz? And if you did, how did you like manage to balance the jazz and classical side at the same time?
Good question. How long have I got for this answer, Izzy?
Go for it.
So I'll just give you a little bit about my background. I consider myself, my generation, probably the last generation of self-taught jazz musicians in this country. I think there are probably a handful of people who don't go to college, but most of the jazz musicians that are around who are under my age seem to have been to college on a jazz course. It's been 30 years now, jazz courses in this country, from the Royal Academy of Music, I suppose, and Guildhall. So in answer to your question, I went to Trinity College of Music to do classical saxophone, not because I knew anything about classical music or the saxophone really. And I'd only been playing 2 years. This wouldn't happen now, by the way. And the guy who was teaching saxophone, Chris Gradwell, he didn't have any students. He had some clarinet students. So I think he wanted a student. So I had no competition. If I was a violin player, a classical violin player, I wouldn't have got in. So I got in only having played the saxophone for a couple of years, really. And I learned a lot by doing classical saxophone, technically and sound-wise. I did an hour-long notes every day. I was quite rigorous in my practice. And at the same time, I was listening to jazz all the time. I met some musicians who were studying classical music there, but are also into jazz. And Simon Purcell was one of them, who ended up being who teaches at Guildhall now, but he was the head of jazz course at Trinity after you, wasn't he, Izzy? Is that right? It was, yeah. And we were trying to play jazz. We were just trying to play, thought we could do it. And I didn't practice it. And it's only when I left college that I worked out ways to practice it. I believe I'm a late developer. And that only happens starting in my 20s that I realised, I need to practice jazz. You can't just turn up and play it. I don't know whether I'm answering your question very well, but I didn't set out to be a classical saxophone player. I probably only played classical music once in that whole time since that period, with a proper recital of classical music on the alto saxophone and the piano for an hour, which was terrifying about 10, 15 years ago. But it was amazing to do. So I don't think it's never been a balance for me to do both. So I asked you the question, is that what you're thinking about yourself, to do both?
Well, yeah, I really like doing both classical and jazz. So, and also at the moment, I definitely want to develop my technique as well as the jazz side of things. So yeah, it's just a struggle balancing both and like having the motivation to do both in the same day.
Okay, so here's a question for you. So why haven't you got the motivation? Is it you're too tired, or you've got too many other things, or?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily motivation, but more like getting tired after doing so long of classical, and then yeah, being quite tired to do then the same amount of jazz.
So has classical got the priority then in your life?
No, I wouldn't say so.
So it's down to you. It's your decision, is it, which way you want to balance it?
Yeah.
So Alyson, what was your answer to the question that Ruby was asking rather?
So I mean, I did my clarinet grades before I got a saxophone, and then at school they just gave me a baritone because there was a big band at school, and so in my lessons that I was going to be doing classical, then I just did that, and since then I haven't even considered classical, to be honest. I mean, I'm such a jazz musician at heart. I knew that myself. But you're saying that you don't. You've got two paths. But you've got to really think about where, you know, the path with heart is that you really feel that you want to go down. And that will take time, I expect. You've just got to do both until that answer comes to you. But active investigation, just ask yourself questions all the time, and just do as much as you can with both of them, and see what comes up for you, because you'll have the answers, you'll know.
Maybe from Martin's question, maybe the implication there is also you mix it up a bit, so don't always start with the classical, maybe alternate, or do a week of always starting with the classical, a week of just shake it. You know, you'll find your natural rhythm and what works best for you. Maybe not even do them one immediately after the other. Maybe do a bit in the morning, a bit in the end of the day. You know how you work best. But I think what's lovely, Martin and Alyson, I think you'll both agree, is that it's really great to see how the attitude towards jazz and jazz education has changed over the last 20 years. You know, it's no longer these sort of prejudices of you can't be a jazz pianist if you come from a classical background because you're going to ruin your technique, or, you know, that you've got to make that decision either or. There are musicians that do both. It's much more of an integral part, I feel, now of what's on offer, and there's less of a prejudice against music. Do you find that, is there a prejudice from where you're coming from, Ruby, or teachers telling you you should be doing one thing and another saying that you should be doing something else?
Well, I think my saxophone teacher thinks that, I think he wants me to do to be a classical musician, but I think that's just because he's heard me do classical stuff more, because that's mainly what he teaches me. But yeah, other than that, not really.
Has it been helpful, the answers to the question?
Yeah, really helpful. Thanks.
Brilliant. So shall we welcome to the stage our second guest, Holly. Holly's going to ask her first question. Over to you, Holly. How are you doing? Nice to see you.
Thank you. How are you? Yeah.
Had a good time. Things been going well for you since the summer school?
Yeah, really well. Yeah, it's been
Brilliant.
quite a strange term, but yeah.
But did the summer school help sort of give you a sense of momentum and focus?
Yeah, absolutely. And like a lot of new players to listen to. I remember in Alyson's like saxophone sectional, we listened to a lot of recordings, so that's given me new things to, yeah.
Brilliant. So would you like to start with your first question, and we'll start with that? That'd be great.
Yeah, my first question is, because I remember Martin mentioned it last time, that he asks when he interviews people, he asks them, how do you practice? And it's like a hard question to answer. And I think it would be really helpful to, yeah, how do you practice?
How do I practice? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I try to do it with as much self-discipline as possible. I think focusing on simple things, you know, you need to be humble and go, I can't do this, and I've got to just focus on that. You know, it might be 5-1 in a turnaround, but just actually focus on it until you can get absolutely what you want, the sound that you want, and feel completely comfortable. And then you can do it at any speed. Practice slowly. I mean, I go through periods of time where I practice a lot, and then I, practice, life gets in the way and I don't practice so much. But when I'm on fire, when I'm actually, I know that I'm very organized, and I'll just be super self-disciplined about it, and put in an hour here, and and then an hour, and just short spaces of time so you can be really focused. And just really be humble about it and know what it is that I want to achieve. It's about having those clear goals.
Do you break it down to things like sound production, maybe the contours of a melodic line that goes with a chord progression, transcribing a solo, scribbling, and as well, the moment of playfulness where you're not really focusing on what someone else has done and trying to reproduce it, but finding your own playfulness?
Yes, all those. Thanks, Issie.
In one practice session, or would you break it up?
No, I tend to be quite obsessive with certain things. Like I'll take a solo, I'll transcribe a solo, and I'll do it in all keys, and I'll then take it through. I'll really take like 3 months on it, 4 months on it, and just be completely absorbed with it, and then take what I want from it properly. But swapping and changing all the time, I don't think it's a good idea. I think you've just got to know that it takes a lot of time to get anything down, and you've just got to give it that space to really imbue in your mind, so you don't forget it. Because you can do lots of practice on stuff, but then it all just goes into the kind of void, doesn't it? But if you can really get things properly down, whether it's doing guide tones or working out some language in all keys, or just doing a blues, getting that down, learning tunes. It's all part of the same thing, but just actually doing it, properly. That's the key, I think.
Martin, how do you practice?
Such a good question. I was just trying to think about it throughout my life, because there's different periods in life meant different practice techniques, I think. Particularly, the time I was doing lots of gigs in the past, I'd be practicing the material that I would be playing on gigs. And, a lot of my groups in the past, I'd want to memorize the music. And that takes me a while, so that'll be a big part of it. But all the basics that I recommend everyone does. I mean, I still start with long notes. When I was at college, if I think about answering that other question, when I was at college years ago, I did an hour of long notes, 9 to 10 in the morning, every day. Not every day, pretty much every day. And then I'd have scales, and I'd really be regimented about it. Now I do the same thing, but like 10 minutes of long notes, and then maybe 20 minutes of a scale thing. So it's all condensed. And then after that, I'll play phrases in all keys. I'm a strong believer in trying to get everything in all keys. And then I'll play a tune with chord sequence in all keys. That's just some of the things, and I'll get very inspired by recordings and trying to work tunes out from recordings. I just really encourage everyone to do that all the time. If there's something you like, work out why you like it. That's what everybody does, really. There's something on a recording you like, just work out why that's the case.
It's great motivation, isn't it? Because it's almost like seeing something that I want to have that. It's like it's resonating with you. Often if people delegate what you need to practice, that can feel like a chore, but when it's something that really resonates with you, that's when you're really ready to apply yourself, isn't it? Because you want to own it and make it part of your vocabulary. I just want to say something. I totally agree with you. It's such an important point you've made, because it's such a fine balance teaching, because I've got these things that have inspired me and I recommend them to students, and they might not quite get it in the same way as me. They haven't got the emotional connection with that piece of music necessarily, whoever I'm suggesting. So I'm always saying exactly that. Find out what you like, because you've got the emotional connection with the music. If something makes you happy when you listen to it, you need to go with that. That's really important. Even if nobody else likes it, by the way, as well. Really go for your own path. So Eva, can we welcome you to the stage and do stay with us, Ruby and Holly. Eva, nice to see you.
Hi, nice to see you too.
How you been since the summer school? All good? Same
Yeah,
question,
I've been
motivated and fired up and still drawing on what you were doing over the summer?
Yeah, I've definitely been motivated. I think when we went into lockdown, I was really like fired up to do a lot of practice and work, which I did. And then towards the summer school, I was just kind of like, oh my God, it's been so long. And then we had the summer school and that was a real booster again. So it was great.
Would you like to start with your question for Martin first?
Yes. So my first question is, how do you work together to balance two frontline players in a band?
How do I work together?
How do you both maybe work together?
Yeah.
Right. What do you mean by frontline players?
Like just two saxes or in your case, two saxes, but it could be like a sax and a trumpet or...
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you mean if I'm playing with Alyson or
Yeah.
like an alto?
As opposed to being just a solo frontline person. So with that added ingredient of having a second.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think about it too much actually, because I'm just thinking, because I play with a lot of guitar players, not so many other horn players, unfortunately, but I just play with the quartets a lot of the time or trio. And if I play with a guitar player, they're a frontline player as well, really, but they're also an accompanying player. I'm slightly diverting the question there because I'm thinking about it as I'm answering. I think things like that. If alto and tenor are playing together, we probably just think about simple things in my music and what I'm going to do. Simple things like who's going to solo when, what octaves we should play lines in, should we play together, who could take the melody on this, do those kind of things. Is that what you mean? Or maybe you could explain a bit more what you're thinking when you ask the question.
Yeah, sorry. So a lot of like bands I've seen, like you said, they're usually just kind of quartets, and then I find that the sax player or the trumpet player is like taking the melody and they're really taking charge. I feel like with two sax players, you have to sort of balance it out a lot more, and you have to like make it more of a group function between you two as well as all of the rhythm section players in the background.
Well,
Or
yeah.
not in the background, but
Yeah, the more people you have in a band, the harder it is, in a way. So it's a good question, and probably quintet, which we did do sometimes, is probably the biggest band I would like playing. I mean, I do play in big bands as well, but so I mean, it sounds like you've got the answer in your question, though. That's the thing. It sounds like you're thinking about these things. And I don't know whether I can even answer that specifically apart from the things I mentioned, like exactly what you said. Who's going to play the tune then? Or is it going to be unison? Is it going to be octave? But someone played this part of the tune and the other person played the other part of the tune. I mean, I like doing it in rehearsals, working out who's going to do what with that kind of. And I'm not a person who writes big band music or very arranged music. In my expression, it's pretty much lead sheet music. I like to get off the page as quickly as possible to improvise. That's a kind of slightly different answer, but actually it's related to the kind of music I play. If I have pages and pages of music, I find that harder to actually get involved in improvising.
So Alyson, I'm wondering, is there any of that decision making actually on the bandstand where the two of you are non-verbally communicating suddenly ideas of how to coordinate that side of things?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, the blending, of course, where do you want to get that, Eva?
It's the other saxophone player in
yeah.
It's the other player, it's the other horn player in her quintet.
Yeah. Sorry, could you ask it again? Because I want to get it exactly right. Could you ask your question again?
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
It was just, how do you balance two frontline players in your band?
Right,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this could be an ego question, couldn't it? As well. But I mean, it's good. It's amazing to be in bands with Martin. And I feel like it's, your playing goes up so much when you're playing with somebody so brilliant, and that's how you improve so much as well. And so yeah, it's been wonderful for me playing with Martin for so long, and you know, it's learning so much. But the actually we play a lot of free music together as well, and duo, and so I think you've got to be really strong with your own voice when you're improvising together, and just really play your line, and not worry too much about the other person as such, because it then sounds good. I think that was Paul Motian that said that. Was it Martin?
Yeah, Paul Blay was talking about Paul Motian when they played together duo. That was piano and drums, by the way. I urge you to check those people out. Paul Motian is a wonderful drummer, and Paul Blay, piano player. And there's an album called Notes, I think. Unusual piano drums duo. And Paul Blay says in the liner notes, "Oh, you never have to worry about changing direction when you're playing improvised music with Paul Motian, because he's doing his own thing anyway, parallel."
Yeah.
And that's very liberating. He said that's incredibly liberating.
I think one of the things also you might want to do, Eva, is to go and listen to Lee Konitz and Warren Marsh when they're just playing in that two horns situation. Because I think if it's two horn players relating to a rhythm section all the time, then the conversation's going slightly the wrong way. It's like Alyson was saying, you know, by doing that, playing together without the rhythm section, that you're getting that more sort of the trust and the interaction, the ebb and the flow. It doesn't always need to be within the context of a rhythm section. Definitely. I will check that out. Thank you. What do you think of Lee Konitz and Warren Marsh, Martin? Lee Konitz and Warren Marsh, they're incredible inspiration to me. I mean, I'm listening to Lee Konitz all the time in the car at the moment, actually. It's unbelievable. If you people have not heard him improvise, it's incredible. Well, one of the questions that's going to come up shortly, we'll be revisiting, so we'll for a minute, but definitely for everybody to advise. So the next person I'd like to invite is Jack. Jack, would you like to come up and say hello and ask your question? Hi, Jack, nice to see you. All good? Being all fired up from the summer school, and is it still enduring? Is the impact still there?
Yeah, there's been a lot of stuff to work on, just because I've had my conservatoire auditions, and it's all been a busy process. But it's just meant a lot of playing, a lot of practice, and it's basically been consistent since our time in August. So yeah, it's been superb.
How many of the auditions have been in person, or have they all been sort of submitting videos?
I mean, they're all submitting videos, but in the sense that I've got people together and played with people in like a quartet environment. And
I bet that felt good.
Rather than just sitting at home with a couple of backing tracks and knocking out there, it's so much better to play with people. And the fact that I've had the opportunity to do that is great. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, would you like to ask your question, and we'll ask it first to Alyson?
Yeah, one thing I get mixed responses about quite a lot. Is on the topic of doubles, and I was just wondering, in terms of being sort of like an employable, like potentially an employable figure in the scene, what doubles are good to have, and sort of to like what standard you should be able to double at on certain instruments.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, because I mean, to earn money, and you know, we're in a business where you probably do have to, unless you're the absolute, you know, cream of the cream, top, you know, and very lucky and know lots of people and have the gift of the gab, you might not be able to just make a living out of just playing the music that you love. I mean, that Martin will disagree with me there, I think, but because he has. But yeah, with regards to doubles, yeah, I mean, you need to do some work on flute and clarinet. I mean, that's the basic. I mean, if you can have bass clarinet as well, be able to play all of the saxophones, especially like tenor and alto, you know, you need to be able, and I mean, if you've got all of the saxophones, it's difficult because it's expensive, really expensive to get them all together, get good instruments, and be able to, you know, because you've got to sound good, and you've got to be able to kind of be in a situation where you're sight reading something, and you've got an array of stuff around. you've got to be able to pick up the right one and play it immediately, and then put it down, and then just be, okay with that. Yeah, it's tricky to balance all of that time. You've got limited time. What do you practice? How much do you practice? I suppose you'd have to see how your life goes and see how the playing goes. But yeah, getting some chops together on those instruments pays dividends, definitely. Yeah.
And what about your own doubling? How is that? What route did you take, and what sort of things do you do to keep it up?
Well, I do enjoy playing classical clarinet, so I will play that, and I teach classical diploma and grade 8 to students now, clarinet. So that keeps that plate spinning. Flute, I tend to practice if I've got a gig, and I do need to practice a lot because that's my least favourite double. So long notes and practice the music.
Yeah.
But I don't own a bass clarinet. I'd love to, because I really love them. And actually I did a gig, I think it was the Sid Lawrence Orchestra, and the first gig I did, somebody said, oh, you know that you've got to do bass clarinet today. I was like, I've never played one. And so I just had to learn, because there's extra keys at the bottom, what it was. And we had this, had a solo. It was just, one of those things that you just have to get together on the day, because it's, your livelihood, and you're under pressure and you just do it. But if you can be prepared, like I wasn't in that situation, that's good to have all of those. And
one of the things that I found, if I've found myself in hot water in a situation like you just said, where it's like you do know you got to play the bass clarinet, is to remind myself I'm not alone, that in bygone years everybody that I know has been in a sticky situation at some point in their career. It's just part of the course, and the best thing to do is just to dive in, and you surprise yourself, rather than getting all sort of tied up with I don't think I can do this and doubting yourself. It's like, well, you've succeeded at so much else when you've had the time to apply yourself. Just dive in and go for it, and you'll surprise yourself. Martin?
Doubling, I do recommend it. I'll just tell you, but my experience is different in that I didn't start on clarinet. I started on saxophone, and it's not problematic, but clarinet's harder, basically. Fit on the fingers, the technique. Saxophone's a pretty easy instrument, really. And I did do clarinet at college as a second study, and flute. And I started doing them in sort of big bands, doubling things, but it just wasn't right for me personally. So it was I didn't want to spend that much time, particularly flute. I found really challenging, and I had the experience of playing really badly on a gig. So I thought, right, I'm just going to not play flute anymore. So for me, that was just my experience, but I'm not saying you need to copy my experience. So I suggest you try it all. But in the bigger picture, it's like you're thinking about, that's a work thing, isn't it? We're just thinking about work there, like shows in London, right? The West End shows, which I've also never done. I mean, I did one once because it was only saxophone. So I was quite lucky to have that experience. But generally, they're all lots doubling, as far as I know. I mean, Alyson's done quite a few, I think. And it's a doubling thing. And some people even double on oboe. I know they do in America, or maybe even bassoon. It's rare for a saxophone player to do that. So the doubling is a really big thing. But as I think Alyson said, you just got to see how it goes and how you feel, because you could spend a lot of time doing that doubling practice, which could be good in some ways. Certainly you do it now. You're young. I mean, what's your feeling about it yourself, Jack?
Well, I mean, just from getting responses from people when I raise the question, people always recommend the clarinet and the flute, and that's something that I work at, like myself at the moment, because I've got the time. As you say, I'm young and I've got the opportunity to explore those, but I just haven't branched out, and it's been it's a very useful answer. Thank you.
I mean, you might find that if you play those instruments and then your emphasis goes to one that you didn't expect, you might be really into playing flute, for instance, or into clarinet. And what do you play? You play saxophone, you play alto or tenor? Or...
Yeah, I also started with the alto. That was where I started, and I've just recently, well, about a year and a half ago, started branching out into doubling the flute and the clarinet.
Yeah, it feels like you want to do it, so you should go for it.
Mm-hmm. One of the things you could do is also make it so that the doubling is doubling. So if you want to practice some sight reading, for example, be doing like Alyson suggests, do a bit of sight reading on the clarinet, then you've sort of done a double whammy of two different, outside of improvising on the saxophone. And those of you that are also watching, thinking, as Alyson's pointed out, saxophonists, it can be really expensive, but having 4 saxophones and then lots of doubling instruments. So the awards for young musicians are a place to go to think about applying for funding. So, that's the argument of it's expected of me at a professional level. We've worked in the past with young musicians. For example, we had a trumpet player who was with us and got on summer school, played to a very high level, actually went through to the BBC Young Jazz Musician of the Year, and they'd never owned a cornet, a flugel. So, and there was, they needed a bit of help with that. So the awards for young musicians saw that in order to progress into the profession, it was necessary to have that. And so same with saxophonists, tenor players who needed soprano saxophones because they're starting to play as young professionals and weren't able to make that leap themselves. So if people are watching, and yourselves all included, awards for young musicians, I think we'll put something on the website and hopefully even get them to come and talk to us on one of these sessions. But there are always opportunities to get a bit of help because people are there wanting, rooting for you, wanting to make it possible. Could we welcome next to the stage, please, Max?
Hello.
Hi, how you doing, Max?
I'm doing good, yeah.
All fired up since the summer school? Has it left its residue? Are you still drawing on all the energy and the creativity that you experienced during the week?
Yeah, it was really good because it was the time it finished, I went straight back into school, and they've been doing everything they can for us, for all the musicians to play in person, which has been really good. And the summer school is very helpful for that.
Beautiful. So shall we start your question? I think it's with Martin this time, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be for both though.
Yeah, if we start with Martin first. Yeah.
Yeah. It's mainly about improvisation and what goes through your head when you're playing, if anything. And then there was like a second part where it was when at your level of experience and skill, are things like licks and scales and general exercises like that to improve your improvisation, are they still things you learn?
Great questions. Right, so I really believe practice and playing are totally different. So when I'm playing with people, I don't want to think about anything. I'd be silly to say that nothing comes into my head. Of course it does, because it's very hard to get into the zone all the time for any of us. So, things might come into my head and what did I eat earlier, or what am I doing tomorrow? And that means my focus is going, right? And when I play with amazing musicians, generally that doesn't happen. I always try and play with people better than me. So, so in relation to the other thing you said, yeah, I do basics all the time. That's what I try to do. Exactly those things: long notes, scales, phrases, licks, or vocabulary, whatever you call them, in all keys, as a kind of warm up. I still keep all that, keep going, I suppose. But the question, it's quite a big question, that what goes through your mind. This is, be interesting to ask everybody about that when they're playing, because I'm sure lots of things do go through people's mind. I recommend you all read Effortless Mastery by Kenny Werner, who's a fantastic piano player, and you can see him doing this presentation on YouTube, I'm sure. Presentation about his book, and I went to a workshop once of his, and he said it's all by the way, it's all based on The Inner Game of Music. Has anyone ever read that book? That's another really good book to read, and he's really updated it for jazz musicians. He's stolen a lot of ideas from that book, and it's really about to do with the conscious unconscious mind in a way. And he gives a great example when he says you're playing away and you're in the zone and it feels really good. And all of a sudden this voice comes into your head, oh no, it's not good enough. No, Miles Davis wouldn't have done that, or John Coltrane wouldn't have. And immediately you got this negative thought. And I'm sure that happens to me. Yeah, I'm sure it does. And probably everybody, if they admitted it, like everybody. And that's, so those books are really interesting to read, to just be aware of that, this voice coming in saying, yeah, not very good here. Because you can have the voice coming in saying you sound amazing as well. And that can be off-putting as well. So the thing is to get rid of the voice. This is a lifetime's work, by the way. But it's such a good question. You know, maybe you could all reflect on what goes through your mind when you're playing. And is it different from what goes through your mind when you practice on your own? I think it will be. Is this useful, by the way? Am I answering your question?
Oh yeah, it's quite insightful. Yeah.
Alyson, might you contribute?
Yeah, I mean that was brilliant, Martin. Yeah, definitely. I mean he's amazing, that the effortless mastery in a game of music. I mean, I'm a meditator, and I do an hour's meditation a day, and I feel that improvisation and meditation are the same kind of things. You're going deep in yourself, and you're trying to just be still and calm and just let, just be, really. And it's that kind of discipline of doing that. But it's in the moment, and it's now, and that's what you're trying to be, not in the future, not in the past. It's immediacy, and you can be yourself, and it's yeah, there's a lot of truth there, everything's there, and it's the place that I want to be the most. It's amazing when it all comes together, and you've got an amazing rhythm section or playing with Martin, and you can feel there isn't really anything going through your head, but it's all working. It's like you're doing stuff and it's happening, and it is effortless. So that's the goal, I think. But with regards to licks and scales and things you learn, and do they, yeah. I mean, I'll still put in a lick here and there, but it's the main thing is to try and learn them so that they are involuntary. There's kind of 4 stages of learning, isn't it? There's like you start off, and then you get it, and then you don't, and then you've got it, but then you can do it standing on your head, and it's finding that you've got to that stage, and then it can be forgotten, and it comes out as your own thing. Then you can recreate it yourself in some way personally. So yeah.
As a composer, as we've talked about when we did the sessions, that my ask is that a lot of the pre-learnt language be left at the door, so that you've used it as a musicianship tool and you've built up that agility and ability, but really keen for you to sort of focus on the context of the piece, so that there's that real true sort of marriage of the improvisation and the composition together, which is something that Alyson's amazing at. We've done a lot of work together through interchange, and I'm afraid, Alyson, you're going to be there forever, because I don't know anyone else that I want to work with you. Sound on the tenor, and I've seen on videos, I've seen Martin looking in the wings, really enjoying your playing, and vice versa, both at gigs, and on video. You can see how much you both enjoy each other's playing, and it really lifts you. The other thing is that sometimes, there's nagging little voices that Martin was talking about. Brian Eno's got this thing where he's got affirmations, and they just randomly get sent one a day. They're quite useful for gigs, so that if you've got something that's really preoccupying you, it takes you out of your zone, and it just gives you something that's quite abstract, quite zen, and it will you take that with you, think, oh, actually, yeah, I'm going to build my solo with that thought in mind. So it frees you up from that sort of being burdened by you giving yourself a running commentary on your own playing, which is terribly boring at times, don't you think?
Yeah, very good point.
Yeah.
Not you again. I'm mindful of time, and I'm thinking I'd like to bring Will onto the stage, and then I think we're going to have to limit it just to a second question per person, otherwise it's probably going to take us into 3 hours rather than 1. So have a think about your second question, which one you'd like to ask. There's one that's asking about Tristano, and I'd like you to ask that question. That's the only one that I'm going to say. I'd like to say which one you're going to ask. So I'll leave. I know who it is, and I'll leave that to be asked in a moment. But let's welcome Will to the stage. Hello, Will.
You're right, Izzy.
Thank you for your immense patience. Has it been interesting to listen to the conversation so
no,
far?
no, it's fine. I've just been listening in. So.
And what have you taken away from it in like 5 words? What's sort of the headlines of what you've taken away from it?
5 words.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, I really enjoyed just the improvisation thing that that you guys were just talking about, and what Alyson was talking about how it just comes. She wasn't really feeling anything in her. Not that she wasn't feeling anything, but it wasn't so conscious that you're overthinking. It just kind of flowed and it came to her. So I enjoyed that a lot. But I don't know how I put it into 5 words. To be honest.
Don't worry, that's fine. Let's have your question, my love. It'd be great to hear.
No, I was just wondering how you two both met and why you decided to really work together, whether that's in a quintet or just playing together in general.
So Alyson, might you start?
So we met, was it 1996, Martin? I think so.
Not sure.
It was. I was a student tutor on the Glamorgan Summer School, and I can remember, I didn't know Martin, but I played with, oh goodness, what's her name?
Amy
Gamlin, yeah. Amy Gamlin and I were playing some Joe Lovano kind of Paul Motian, Joe Lovano, Weaver of Dreams, and we did, it was lovely. We were trying to sort of emulate that at the jam session, and then I remember you coming over to me and talking and asking me lots of questions about NYJC and about Guildhall. I was at Guildhall at the time. Yeah, so I can really remember meeting you there. And then I think our paths crossed at a Kenny Wheeler gig like a few years later, and I think I was a bit rude to you, wasn't I? I think you said. And then yeah, after that we've obviously become very good friends and closer. But we share a lot of the same love of music. You know, we both love Paul Motian, Charlie Hayden side of things, and we love, you know, listening to music together, playing together. It's lovely to actually have a partner that's you know, that you can do that with. It's wonderful. You know, it's a big part of our relationship.
So Martin, why do you want to play musically with Alyson? What is it that makes you go back to play again?
Well, it's interesting, you know, because I still can remember that 1996. You'd say it's 1996. I can still remember you playing that tune with Amy, Weaver of Dreams. So there was something there that resonated all that time ago, and when I first went round to your house for 3.5 years ago, we played Donna Lee together. This is like, it's quite strange, really.
Yeah.
It's like not quite a date, but it was like a first meeting, and the first thing we do is play Donna Lee. Very romantic. Anyway, so no, I think the fact that I've got different projects, and they're all different musically. You know, like Alyson mentioned, free improvising. Then we do a Charlie Parker thing, celebrating his music. Then I've got a band which is more Indian and Arabic. And so these are all these diverse musical paths or influences that I like, that Alyson can fit into incredibly well. Feels great. Very supportive player and supportive sound, actually the sound. I don't know, these things are really hard to put into words, why people work together or why it sounds good to me, or, you know, it's pretty hard to put music into words. I know we're supposed to be doing that for this hour, but
I think also within that same spectrum, I'm not sure how many of the youngsters that we work with realise that, you know, just like when they're on the summer school and there are some youngsters they resonate with and others.
Oh, you're gone. You're going to come back?
Yeah, I think she was saying that there are people that you resonate with and that you have chemistry with, and that's a natural thing, isn't it? And
I'm
And-
sure I've got a poltergeist because every time I say anything contentious, my laptop suddenly disconnects me.
It wasn't
Didn't
that
hear you.
contentious, was it?
No, we don't
Yes,
want to hear you edited.
it's the same spectrum, isn't it? There are equally as many people that, with the best interest and being very courteous about it, we don't want to work with. That's on an individual basis, and that's fine for you to own. But also, if people give you opportunities and you think, I'm not quite sure about this, I would take it anyway, because it's really good, especially in the early days, just to sort of be very malleable and adaptable to different situations that you're in. And we've got to be quite sort of sleight of hand and a bit like shoals of fish and murmurings of birds as musicians, being in situations where we go with the flow. So definitely follow everything that you're invited to be, but also be kind to yourself if you suddenly think, I'm not really sure I'm part of this, I don't feel part of it, or I'm not connecting with them. Don't expect, it's not a professional expectation that you connect with everybody. Do you think that's fair enough, Martin and Alyson?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you're talking about on a not necessarily musical, we're talking personal.
Well, I
Whether
think the two go together, don't they? Because I mean, I'm talking more musically. If you just find yourself in a situation and it's not doing it for you, but there are other situations that you think, yeah, I'm really connecting and I want to play with this musician more. Don't think that the expectation of the professional is that you need to connect with everybody. You don't.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the good thing about it is there are loads of musicians out there. There's just worldwide, but certainly in this country. So you're always going to find someone to play with. So you're always going to find a musical soulmate, actually, at least one. You only need one, but there are lots out there.
And
I mean,
it's
it's all a development, isn't it? It's like it. I'm sure I thought differently when I was 20 than I do now about who I wanted to play with, actually, or what music I liked. Or that's the great thing about it. Don't be fixed with it. Don't be fixed like, oh, I just like this music. That's not my thing. I'm not into that. It changes. It just changes all the time. And be open to that. Just be open to change. It's quite good. It's quite nice trying to listen to something that you thought you weren't into. So take things from other people, and offer them things as well. Yes, it's such an exciting thing, music. It's endless. Yeah. It's endless. That's the great thing.
It's a journey, isn't it, as well? Don't always focus on the final destination, because it's the journey that's the thing. So I'm mindful of time, and I know that we've got 6 questions and it's now 8 minutes to 7. So we probably will go slightly over, but how about we've really tightened things up and sort of maybe even just one of you answer one question and one answer the other. Maybe definitely the Tristano one definitely needs to go to Martin. So do you want to start with that, Holly? Let's do that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was just interested on your thoughts about that Tristano approach to improvisation, and then getting that sense of individuality that he has from that, and Lee Konitz and Warren Marsh as well.
Wow.
And how that carries through different styles within jazz. Yeah, and how you maintain your voice. Yeah.
Amazing question. This is the kind of paradox of it. Okay, so Lenny Tristano is probably one of the first really amazing teachers, as well as in being an incredible piano player. And basically, most of his stuff is becoming jazz. It was within jazz education now, that practicing with the metronome, playing in all keys and all this. But the paradox of all this is that he says you should copy these solos and emulate these people, but you don't turn out like them. This is the thing that a lot of people don't realize. And that's so good. And it's about getting the feeling of the person and the narrative of their story. I mean, I believe in all, I don't do all that stuff that I should, but I totally believe in his method. It works. And those people, Lee Konitz and Warren Marsh, are probably the 2 greatest improvisers in jazz. Whether people like it stylistically or not is actually irrelevant to me, but just their notes of connect one note to another. I don't think there's anybody else. There's a few on that, almost on that level, but it's unbelievable, that purity of improvising. It's incredible. Am I answering the question?
Yeah.
Can I quickly just ask, so you listen to that music?
Yeah. I really admire Lee.
Oh, wow. You're going to be amazing. Stay with it.
Rabih, would you ask your question to Alyson?
Yeah, so Alyson, if there was like one standout moment in your career that that I could like learn from, what would it be?
Oh no, gosh, that requires me to have a memory, Ruby. Standout moment in my career.
Oh, interchange, surely.
Oh, of course it was. It was actually just meeting with Issie Barratt. I mean, that's oh gosh, let me think. Oh God, can I just think about that, and somebody else ask a question, because I can't think of anything.
Yeah,
right
because
now.
you've done a lot of things, Alyson, haven't you?
Standout moment.
While Alyson thinks, Martin, is there anything that comes to mind from your experience, your career? One standout moment?
Mine. Oh yeah, I mean, for me, it's just some of the things I did, like say to people I want to play with them, and not get a rejection. So that was, there was a time for me when and there's always a time for people when it felt right to ask somebody who I admired. Paul Motian springs to mind, the drummer, American drummer, who I played with, did 3 tours with, and an album on ECM. And there was a time, I was in my early 30s, when I asked him, I didn't know him, I just wrote a letter to him. And so that was really, I do encourage people to do this. There's always a right time when you just feel right, oh, I should ask that person to play with them. And that definitely changed my life, doing that.
Any news, Alyson? Anything?
Oh God, I think it's more just taking opportunities. If I can remember doing my first NYJC gig and thinking, am I capable of this? Should I be here? That kind of thing, where you question yourself. And sometimes you've got like self-confidence, like brilliant self-confidence, and then other times you've got humility, and it's like a Mexican standoff, isn't it, sometimes in your mind, of those two things going, oh. But it's when you really push forward and you think, right, I'm going to do something, and I've got to push myself out here, and I'm going to do it. And those first moments where you could actually go, no, I'm a bit shy. And I know that you are not like that, because you've really got some guts, and the way you play, and you've got a lot of flair, and you're quietly intelligent and brilliant. So I know that what I'm talking about here. You'll actually go and do what you need to do when you need to do it. So yeah, I suppose things like that. Yeah, just going for it.
So Eva, you're going to ask Martin a question now. Thanks a lot for that, guys, and well done, Ruby.
Yeah, that was great to listen to as well. So I was just wondering, what are the main sort of principles for composition and arranging, and how have you done compositions throughout your sort of career? Because I'd really like to start doing some more, but I'm just not really sure where to start. I feel like there's so much music that can be made. I find it quite difficult. But yeah, what's your take on that?
You're not sure where to start composing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've composed a long time, but I'm not an arranger at all. I'm not interested in arranging for a large ensemble, or at the moment I'm not anything like that. So in that way, I can't tell you how to arrange or anything. There's loads of people out there who are good at that. But what I suggest is you try and write a composition that's something like you like already. Copy something. The same I would suggest, like copying, if you want to play like someone good, try and copy them at this stage, emulate them, see what comes to you, and do the same compositionally. I've learned most by transcribing compositions of people I really like. And that's how I learned about, I'll give you an example. I transcribed lots of Bill Evans' codas. How he ended pieces I was always intrigued by, and I transcribed the chords, just how he ended pieces, and that really helped me with harmony. I've listened to a lot of indie music that helped me in with melody and rhythm, just all kinds of things. So for me, it's the same. It's as playing. It's all the same, just getting stuff from things I like. And then that goes into me, and hopefully it comes out my unique way. And that's what I recommend. So if this is a recording you like, think about the solo or anything. Just think about the piece that you like. That's what I would do first.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Deconstruct it.
I will definitely do that.
Madly transcribing. I did actually literally live in a garret. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't being pretentious. It was just that's where I ended up living. And for 5 years, I transcribed like crazy because there were no scores. It's not like when you're wanting to look at classical compositions where you can go to Senate House or all the libraries. So I transcribed all of Porgy and Bess. And I transcribed loads of loose tubes and I transcribed loads of solos. And I found out 5 years later that when I worked through the night at the piano and scribbling it down, that the floorboards weren't as thick as I thought they were. And I'd kept my neighbour downstairs awake for 5 years, frantically transcribing. But my composition and that's where I get my composition and orchestration chops from, is from the listening and taking it down. It's not reading it. And so I think that's, like we were saying, when you're in love with something, whether it's from an improvisational element or a compositional element, when it resonates with you, that's when you get hungry for it and you want to put that time in. So I think it's great what Martin was just saying. Next person is, where are we now? Eva, and then the next person is Max, is going to ask Alyson a question.
Thanks, Martin. That was great. Also.
Hi, Alyson.
Hi,
My
Max.
question was, when you're approaching new music, is there like a particular method or way you go about playing it for the first time in like a sight reading sense, or is it something that just comes naturally to you by ear?
So new music, well, I do a lot of big bands where I'll turn up and I'll have to play straight away, and it's all sight reading and solos getting put in front of you, or and so in that sense, I'm just reacting in the moment. It's so I suppose I'll scan the music feverishly beforehand, just in that time that I've got, just check there's no pitfalls that I might fall into, check accidental, make sure I know where the key changes are, just any kind of nuances, musical directions, and also if I'm swapping to flute or something like that, or just scan it really, and then look at the changes, see if it's something that I know, say, it's a changes of Cherokee or something, or that kind of thing. If I was in a rehearsal, then new music just as freshly as I possibly could, and listen out for everything that's going on with them, and give the musicians respect that I'm playing with, and let the ideas flow from that, because hopefully I've done my homework before, and I can react in the moment, and so it's not really about approaching it as such as just reacting in the moment, I suppose. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does.
Okay.
How does it relate to what you've discovered for yourself?
For me, well, it's just given me like I said before, more insight into like how the professional world really works with these kind of things. Because my background came from grades and sight reading was just an exercise, and I didn't really think of, and at the time I wouldn't really have thought of it as like a day-to-day thing that professional musicians would have to do. Yeah.
Brilliant. Also the same with scales. I played classical oboe too, talking of all the doublings. I actually started as an oboe player, got to grade 8 and beyond, and the scales to me were just a task to do in order to, but now as an improviser, there's an ingredient with, and a composer, an ingredient with which to play with, it's given a whole new raison d'etre of playing scales.
Yes.
I think we'd like to ask Will now to ask the final question. I'm going to hang back and just ask a few things to Martin and Alyson just to wrap things up. But Will, we'd like to ask you to ask your question to Martin.
Martin, I was just going to ask, like, I know it might seem a little bit vague, but in terms of if we're talking about tone, and in jazz, tone's so important, who would you say, if you had to label 1, 3, however many you want, people, your tonal inspirations?
Wow, it's interesting actually. I really love lots of players, but I don't know whether I try and copy their sound.
Right.
I mean, I can tell you, and you know, Charlie Parker and Ornette Coleman. I love Lee Konitz, John Coltrane, Joe Henderson. I mean, there's so many players, and in some ways, I want to sound like a piano player or a guitar player. But that's a pretty vague answer as well, maybe, isn't it?
Oh, all right.
But I actually don't think I'm very good at emulating. I try to, but I don't actually think I'm very good at emulating people's sound. And I think there's quite a good thing about that. So maybe I've got more of an original sound. I don't know. There's something about trying to do something and not quite making it is really good as well.
What about setting a sound? Did you set out to, even, you know, divorcing it from whether you've heard it someone else playing like that, have you focused your thoughts on and what you do on how you do want to sound? Has that developed an intention?
No, I think this is interesting. I think because I had that early classical, just by chance, that going to Trinity that I mentioned earlier, and right at the beginning of, it wasn't that I'd been playing 10 years and I went to Trinity. I'd only been playing 2 years. So it was so formative. And the first thing I did there was told to do, you know, was long notes for an hour a day. And I think that was, in a way, it was kind of a neutral thing, the sound, but it was just a projection, a sound projection, and a quite a pure tonal quality. You know, I don't sound like Cannibal Adderley, or I don't sound like Eddie Lockjaw Davis, who's got a lot of rasping in his sound. If you've never heard him, you guys should check him out, Eddie Lockjaw Davis. Or there's some of those alto players who sing through the instrument with it's a very throaty sound. I'm kind of the opposite of that because I've never got that together. And I think that's to do with just that, thinking about sound in quite a pure way, not necessarily a certain person. I don't know. That's a vague answer for you.
No, it's all right. Cheers.
Will, I'm wondering if you might ask the same question to Alyson and then we'll wrap up. I can sense, understandably, I can see parents in the background and they're understandably chomping to do things that aren't on camera. So, Will, why don't you ask the question to Alyson?
The same question, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. What, the tone in terms of tonal inspiration?
Yeah.
Yeah, Alyson, who if you had to pick one or three people, how many other people, who would you say influence your tone the most?
I've had different periods of studying people, and I do try and emulate. I do try and get exactly the sound, and just play along with it, and try to do that so that it feels like one sax in the room, you know. I've tried to do that with Don Byas and Stan Getz, Coltrane as well, Gene Ammons, Charlie Parker. I don't know. There's quite a few that I've written. Joe Henderson. It depends what I'm studying at the time, you know. But I will try and get the sound. I will try to, you know, make it sound like me, and then I suppose then you hope that you have your own sound, because you don't, you know, it's like playing other people's licks. It's like sounding like somebody. It's not your life, is it? You've got to say what you've got to say, not somebody else's life. So yeah, hopefully when in the moment you're improvising, it's not that anymore, but you just take from the masters, and that's the place to be, you know, place to get all the answers. So
right. Yeah, no, thank you.
Brilliant. Well, I'm going to say a big thank you to the young musicians who joined us, and then I'm just going to hang back just for a few minutes with Martin and Alyson. So can I first of all thank Rabih? Thank you very much, lovely. Very nice to see you.
So much for having me.
Thank you, Holly. You're welcome, Rabih.
Very much.
See you soon. Eva, lovely to see you. Look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks so much. Nice to see you.
Max, look forward to seeing you again. Hope to see you all in person very soon. Nice to see you, Max.
Thank you, Izzy.
Nice to see you, Will. And fabulous to see you, Jack. So stay online to do the conversation, but liberate the rest of the household so that they can come into the rooms. They've very patiently been with you all, but see you very soon. So Martin, I'm just wondering, we've known each other since the 90s and we've been on quite, you know, parallel journeys. Sometimes we've crossed and worked together, NYJC, Royal Academy of Music, Trinity. and other times there have been big chunks of time that we haven't seen each other. But I think there's been a common thread, sort of seeing how the scene's evolved, the way that the young musicians that we work with through NYJC have become integral parts of the current scene, and how they've gone on to become, you know, both professional performers and starting to develop their skills as educators. And then the biggest thing that we've seen is how the conservatoires have taken on the jazz and made it an integral part, so they've actually got jazz departments. And I'm wondering, what's your sort of philosophy about the state of jazz education in the UK at the moment? How do you feel it is compared to what your aspirations are as a jazz musician? If you were 30 years younger and on the same journey as the people that we teach on the NYJC, can you see it fulfilling, or will there still be some independent study?
Would there be independent study? Yeah, I mean, I wonder if it does fulfill everything. I mean, I'm really excited about how it's developed. It's a good question to look back on it, and how the level of teaching is much higher now. The thing about students now, young people, they get there so much quicker than I did, you know. I think the good thing about it, it seems, is they all have their own thing outside of the college as well that's different. Every generation has to have that. So it's not all the input is coming from the colleges. And each, because I do a bit of teaching at Trinity, Laban, Guildhall and the Academy, and they've all got a different emphasis, which is also good. This is to do with the head of the courses, of course, and probably their bias. So that's all good. If they were all the same, then it would be problematic, I think. So it's really important that these heads of courses do stamp their personality. Like you stamping your personality on NYJC, you know, none of these things are neutral, and that's fine. That's all very important. What was the second question? I'm not sure what you mean.
So, you know, with all the things you're now doing, because you've got such a diverse, all the range of different things that you're doing as a performer, do you think that the current jazz education scene, if you were sort of with those same interests, but actually 30 years younger, so you were studying with those same interests, do you think that you would automatically, those would get fed by the jazz courses you were on, or do you still think that there would be a lot of sort of independent journey that you yourself navigate?
I see what you mean. So that's so difficult to answer, though, isn't it? To actually put myself there. I mean, I'm wondering, because that's a bigger question. You know, the thing about not having the jazz courses, when it's what I touched on earlier, in a way, you probably do become more independent, but learning the basic skills takes longer, much longer. For me, it did. So what I think is good, I mean, I think in a way that's what the colleges do. They're teaching people the basic skills, but on a very high level, and how to play in bands, play all these different kinds of music. So what I think is good about the colleges is, by and large, people get their technical ability together very high. And it actually starts with a lot of them on NYJC as well. That's what's noticeable to me, I think, the technical ability of young people. So then there's the challenge of reining that in a bit and making music. And this just happens as you get older, I think, with people. But it is a different time, definitely. If I look back on it, as you asked me to do then, 30 years ago, 30, 40 years ago, whatever, before the courses started, it was all hit and miss how people learn. But there's a lot of good things about that as well.
Well, that phrase of learning on the bandstand was very used a lot, wasn't it, by our generation, that was the way that you would often play with older musicians. So, and all the stuff that was going on at venues like Ronnie Scott's and sort of the Cubs, the Lion Cubs idea, where you've got the older veterans bringing in lots of younger players to play with them. So there's a totally different approach. I
think that's so important, that point you've made, though, and it's this, you know, that's like mentoring. I consider that a mentoring thing, and that does happen, but it doesn't happen as much. So that's why the colleges they've got to take that role.
Yeah.
Young musicians should hang out with older musicians, basically. That's how you learn, really.
There are quite a lot of older musicians who say that they don't feel that they're relating to the younger musicians in the way that the older generation related to them, and they feel that's because of the youngsters going to the conservatoires often. So there's that little bit of connection outside that, so like you say, it swings and roundabouts. You gain some things and you lose others. So just keep asking. If you hear someone that you want to play with, it doesn't matter how old they are. If it's something that you feel connected with, like we've all been saying, don't be shy to ask, because jazz musicians are very generous, musically generous. They want to play with others. So I don't know anyone that's come up to me and said, do you know what, I asked so and so, and don't tell me if you have, by the way, not online, not live. But I don't know anyone that's ever come up to me and said, oh, I asked so and so, and they were, do you know what, they were so disinterested and they never got the opportunity. It's quite the opposite, sort of statistically. It's like, yeah, let's get together, let's have a blow. And so with that in mind, I'm wondering, Alyson, what sort of things do you feel that you've got creatively out of your collaboration with Martin that you want to take further as well? So some, you know, the seeds have been sown, and then it's I would really like next time for us to explore X, Y, and Z.
So I mean, I love playing in Cherokee, the Indian band. I find that exhilarating. Will Glazer and Mike D'Souza having, you know, playing with that caliber of rhythm section, and Martin obviously. But it's, yeah, that's opened up a whole genre of music to me that I'd never experienced before, and the sort of stationary quality of it. I mean, that appeals to me a lot. It sort of goes into the meditation side. You know, it doesn't modulate. It's all very stationary because you're just playing on a raga or a set of notes, and it's all about the rhythm and reduction, and it feels very interesting, and I think I'll explore that side of things more. I'm starting to write some music in that way as well. Yeah, so I mean, creatively, I mean, Martin and I work a lot together, and we talk a lot about music all the time, and we exchange ideas. And so, yeah, I mean, we did that project with the Charlie Parker project, and that was so great, just to take one artist and totally immerse yourself in all the recordings and playing all those tunes and the rhythmic side of him, which is the paramount, and that was a real education for me as well.
Celebrate the centenary as well is.
Yes, it was to, yeah, that was the main reason. But yes,
I'm wondering, Martin, with all the conversations that we've had about the breadth of projects that you're doing and sort of having an insight into how the two of you have been working in the quintet in different settings, the other thing that is very noticeable, and Alyson's touched on it, is that you're very keen to work with across the generations, and people that were students, people that you've met, you stopped seeing them as students, you see them as colleagues, and you invite them to be in your projects. And I'm wondering, was that a conscious decision, or is that just something that's evolved through being?
I think it just happens. I think I'm just so lucky to teach at all these places and on your course, and it just happens. You know, there's always a moment when, these guys, they're getting quite good now. I think we should play together here. And I'm always trying to play with people at colleges, you know, because it's the only place to play now. So I'm not conscious of it, thinking I've got to play with younger people. Or older people as well, by the way, or people my own generation. But if I step back and look at it, I realise that is really important to me. It's really important, and that's what I encourage everyone, all these young people to do. Everyone has their own thing, their own generation. That's really important, to play with their own generation. You're growing up at a certain time in history, and external things are affecting you all in a very similar way. I mean, now is a very good example, isn't it? But I'm talking socially and musically, and that's, people have a certain feeling together of certain ages. And that's great. Then there's the thing we touched on earlier, which you're talking about, mentoring older people. So I try and play with older people as well. You know, so in a trio that I have is Jeff Williams. He's the generation before me, and then Mike Outram's a generation like 15 years younger than me. That's great. That feels really balanced to me. Amazing. And then I'm lucky to play in sometimes younger musicians groups. In fact, I should plug a gig. I've actually got a gig, I think.
Let's
The
hear
gig might even happen, a Vortex online type gig or something, whatever it is, in December with Phelan Burgoyne, who was also on your course, right? You know, that's when I met Phelan, when he was about 12 or 14 or something. And so we've been playing on and off since then, really. And Rob Luft, I think, is doing it. Did he ever go on your course?
No, he didn't. No, but we know each other. With the bands have supported each other at festivals and things like that. So, yeah, great.
Oh, so we're actually doing. I mean, as far as I know, it's happening. We're doing a gig, and actually related to Paul Motian, we're going to. Phelan had this idea of playing a whole of a Paul Motian album, which I've forgotten the title of. It'll come to me in a minute. So that's going to be, I don't know, live stream.
When is it?
December the 15th or something.
Oh, we'll put it on this.
Yeah, I'll let you know the dates.
That'd be great. Brilliant. So I'm wondering, Nick, are you there? Do you want to come and tell people how, if they would like to sign up and hear more of what we're doing, how do you sign up for the newsletter? And also, because Martin and Alyson both know how passionate we all are to make sure that young musicians can access what we do, and those that come from backgrounds where they would benefit from a bursary and financial help, that we're very committed to making sure that everybody can access what we do, and that economics isn't a barrier, especially at the moment. It's been, obviously, with what's been going on with COVID, lots of freelance people and people being made redundant and stuff. The impact has been huge, but I think we've managed to keep everybody buoyant, but we are a bit depleted. So anyone that would like to donate, how do we sign up for the newsletter? How do we donate, Nick?
Yes, so if you'd like to, first of all, be more involved in NYJC's activities, either as a young musician, music leader, practitioner, or an audience member, you can sign up for NYJC's newsletter by visiting nationalyouthjazz.co.uk/sign up. And then if you'd like to support NYJC in its commitment to making our work accessible to all young musicians, no matter what their financial background, like we're saying, how very important that is in the current climate and in the current situation, to make a donation to our bursary fund, you can visit nationalyouthjazz.co.uk/donate.
So in 13 months' time, 13 and a half, NYJC is going to be 15 years old. So we've set a target, a donation target of £15,000 over so if we could raise that with which to celebrate and do some additional things to mark our 15th birthday. So if you're watching and you'd like to be part of that, do join us and donate, as Nick has said. But in the meantime, I really, from the bottom of my heart, both personally and professionally, want to thank you both, because you're such a huge inspiration and motivation as well. You really keep me going, propelling forward, as do all the young musicians that we work with. So it's really generous of you both to join us. So for now, can I thank, please, Alyson, Cawley?
Pleasure. Thank you for inviting me today.
Really lovely to see you again. And Martin, very lovely to see you again, Martin Speake.
Thanks very much. It was good fun. Really nice to have these challenging questions from these great young people. Thank you.
We've got a few left, so what we'll do is we'll scoop them up and email them, and then if you have the time, just to, if there's anything that you feel that you'd like to respond to,
sure, yeah,
yes, that'd be great. But I will be in touch with both of you, because I've got some plans for things to happen in the new year, so I will be in touch very shortly to involve you in NYJC further come 2021. But in the meantime, everybody, thanks so much for watching. Thank you so much to all the young musicians. If you're still there, come back online to give us a wave and say goodbye. But for now, see you next week, where we will be with Zoe Rahman and Nikki Yo talking about their duo. See you soon. Have a lovely week. Ciao.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Yes.
Bye-bye.